exchanging the prisoners.
So, well, on that bright note, let's pray. Gracious God, we thank you for bringing us together here today as we come here in your name for a time of learning, a time of fellowship, a chance to share our stories and share our faith. We know how being together strengthens each one of us and how sharing our stories and sharing our burdens makes them so much easier to carry. We thank you that we've gotten some rain that we need. We know that we were in desperate need of rain, and though we don't always enjoy the cold temperatures and the dreary weather, we know that the cycle of life means that we need the water to live. We need the cycles that bring us to a dormant time, to a new time, to a fresh times, and all those times that are a microcosm of the life that you have in store for us. We pray that you be with those who we've mentioned with needs and concerns, be with those folks in the war-torn areas of the world and those folks who are experiencing violence even in their own neighborhoods and their own families. We know, Lord, that that kind of violence isn't your will, and we pray that it would come to an end, that you would find a way to bring peace to the world. If we would obey you and love our neighbors as ourselves, we know what a better world this would be. We ask especially that you be with Lorraine and Mary and Anita, with Travis and Paula, any others who are experiencing any hardship or sickness or suffering, and if we can be of help to them, show us how. And please, Lord, move them to ask for help when they need it and not be afraid to reach out if we might be able to help them. We ask that you be with us today as we study your word. Help us to find good news in this word. Help us to see how this word works in our lives and in our world, and help us to share that news with others. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, we have another parable. We've had a lot of parables here so far. And as we come to the end of the church year, we are celebrating Christ the King Sunday this Sunday. And then, which, as I said in my announcements on Sunday, is a sort of a New Year's Eve for the church, because then the first Sunday in Advent begins a new church year. And one of the reasons we timed the commitment cards that went out the way we did is that it's sort of a New Year's resolution. If you want to fill out that card and make that like your New Year's resolution for faith, this is a good time to do that. So it is, we're talking about, Jesus is talking about end times, what the kingdom of heaven will be like. And then as we move into the first Sunday of Advent, we continue some of those readings, but then we look forward to Jesus coming again. And so as we celebrate Christmas and his birth, we prepare to celebrate his coming or coming again when he comes, as and I like to think of it, as the Bible says, he comes to make all things new. There is that judgment, and again, judgment is dependent a lot on the attitude of wait till your father gets home. Is it going to be good for you, or is it going to be not so good for you? Have you been good, or have you been, a naughty little child? And so, but that's one way to look at it. So we have the parable today. I guess it's a parable of a king who separates the sheep from the goats. Jesus compares himself to a king who moves among his subjects to see how he is treated. What is done for the least of those who belong to his family is truly done for him. Jesus said to the disciples, "When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep at his right hand, and the goats at the left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, 'Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. for I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you? And the king will answer them, truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. Then he will say to those at his left hand, you that are accursed, depart from me into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not give me clothing. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. Then they also will answer, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or in prison or sick and did not take care of you? Then he will answer them, truly I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. So kind of weeping and gnashing of teeth with a little different twist. And you know, again, it's always kind of ironic that we read these kind of things and then we say the gospel of the Lord, the good news of the Lord, right? Well, if you are the one that are going away into, how do you say it? We're not going into eternal punishment, but if you're going into the kingdom of heaven, then it is good news, right? If we're in the right column when it comes to the sheep and the goats, then we're going to be okay. First, some comments from my friend Brian Stoffergen. I think I'll meet him someday. He's at, actually, I think at St. Mark's Lutheran Church somewhere.
Is he a pastor?
Oh, I'm sorry. Faith Lutheran Church, Marysville, California. Yes, he is a pastor. Lutheran pastor. Marysville, that's what I thought was familiar. He lives in Marysville.
Wrong state.
Yeah. 3,000 miles away in Marysville.
Or great state if you want to go visit.
Yeah. Someone want to do a field trip. Bible study field trip. We're going to go to see Brian and then California.
Why don't we invite him to come here?
Oh, I'd rather go to California.
Yeah, we'd rather go there. We can't put that kind of an imposition on him.
That's right.
That's right.
We're going to take the church van.
Oh, boy.
As long as I don't drive.
Meanwhile, back at Bible study, Brian says, I have a love-hate relationship with this text. I hate it because it seems to make works the requirement for being blessed by God. There's no mention of faith or justification or forgiveness or the cross, the acts of God that bring us salvation. Rather, the text is all about human actions. I hate it from a family systems approach, because doing such things for others can create codependent relationships between the helper and those in need. And that's something we've talked about quite a bit. We have usually answered the question, am I my brother's keeper, with yes. We are to take care of our needy brothers and sisters. Our text would support this answer. However, if we look at this answer from another perspective, we may want to change our response. Who of us wants to be kept? We keep animals in the zoo or pets in a pen. Such kept animals are unable to survive on their own. Sometimes we may keep people in a similar bondage. So we need to struggle with how we can best care for the needy as Jesus' parable says we should. How can we do it in a way that doesn't put them and us in bondage? And then he says, I love it. I love it because these good works are not really works that earn us heaven, because the doers of them don't realize that they have done anything good. Caring for other people is such a part of their nature that the caring acts come naturally, perhaps even unconsciously, like a good tree naturally producing good fruit. It doesn't have to think about producing fruit. They just happen. Their production is part of its nature, in the same way the goats don't realize that they have done anything wrong. The great surprise may be a more appropriate title to this text than the final judgment. Both groups are surprised when they hear about their good deeds or lack thereof. David M. Granskow picks up on this theme with his brief comment, more important is the observation of Jeremiah's that this is not a typical judgment story, insofar as the righteous are surprised at being among the saved. So that's always, the kind of thing that interests me about this parable is the fact that, when Jesus commends those who have done good and done good things for him, they say, well, when did we do that? When did we just did what came naturally. As Christians, I think that would be pretty much the ideal situation for us. If we said, well, we just did it because that's what Christians do, not because we should, not because we're expected to, not because we want to, again, earn God's favor, as he says, that when we look at it from the standpoint of works righteousness, well, if I help enough people, I'll get into heaven, right? If I help more people, God will love me more. But here, it's just a natural outcome of our faith. In 1 John, I think it is where it says, we love because God first loved us, because Christ first loved us. It keeps coming back to our response. What is our response to God's great love for us? And it's just a natural helping. That brings up the question, what about people who aren't necessarily faithful people, who don't believe in Jesus, but they do good things? What does it say? They're just good-hearted people. They may be Jewish or Muslim or whatever, or atheist even, but they're good-hearted people, and they do good things because it's what they do. So this is why, again, judgment is not up to us. That's the important thing. We don't know how God will judge. We don't know what God's standards are, if we want to put it that way. So we can't say who's in and who's out. We can't, it's not up to us. It says here that the king will separate the people one from another, not us. So that's something we need to keep in mind in this the whole way through, is that judgment is up to the Lord. Jesus will come to judge the living and the dead. He doesn't need our help. He can do that on his own. We don't have to point fingers and tattletale on our neighbors. Jesus knows what's up. But we need to remember that is his responsibility, not ours. And this is another one of those passages where in one of the other commentators, it says, the interpretations of this passage are hotly contested. So, we have that from time to time. They're confusing, they're contested, so again, how does it apply to us today? What does it mean to us in our situation? All those sorts of things. And this, notice we took it, well, let's see. As we're going along here in Matthew's gospel, this passage and this whole kind of discourse of Jesus is leading up to his passion. Right after this parable, which is subtitled here, The Judgment of the Nations in the HarperCollins Study Bible. The next is The Plot to Kill Jesus. And when he finished all these sayings, his disciples, you know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified. The chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas. So we're going from here into Holy Week, into Passion, into Jesus' suffering and death. So he has given us these warnings, if you will, that there will be a judgment day, and where we stand on that judgment day will be God's decision, I guess, God, according to God's grace, but also that we, as he said, be prepared, keep awake, do what you can, essentially to keep your faith strong and live, what we might call today a good Christian life. Do things that strengthen your faith, not things that are going to weaken your faith and draw you away from Jesus, but things that will bring you closer. He refers to himself as the Son of Man, and again, that comes from the vision in Daniel of the end times, when the Son of Man will come on riding on the clouds, and this eschatological vision that we talk so much about. So we have all kind of names, Judgment Day, the end times, whatever we want to call it, the second coming, but that is when the Son of Man comes in his glory. And that glory, again, is something for us to remember, that Jesus coming is going to be a glorious thing. There's going to be judgment involved. It's maybe not going to be glorious for everyone, but it is to God's glory that this will happen. And in the vision from Daniel, and it's kind of alluded to here, that it's not so much Jesus coming to earth, it's the Son of Man coming to his throne, as it says here. He will sit on the throne of his glory. So it's Jesus taking charge, Jesus being enthroned as in his proper place as ruler, as king. So it's again not so much that vision of Jesus coming to earth as he did the first time, but Jesus taking control, Jesus taking the throne, taking his rightful place. And him sitting on his throne, him taking his rightful place, has implications for us, because this is, we might call it the judgment throne, the judgment seat. This is from where he will judge the world in righteousness, as we say. The nations will be gathered, and let me see. I have this vision is the final eschatological parable. It answers the question, what will God do with all the others outside the community? Those who either persecute Christians or otherwise feed, visit, or clothe them in their time of persecution. If you were part of that little community, you might want to know that the Son of Man, the King, the Shepherd, has got your communities back ultimately. So, what that seems to be saying is even the non-believers will be gathered. Believers and non-believers alike will be gathered, the Christians and others. Nations there, again, is the Greek word ethnos, which basically means not us. It'll be us and not us. And they will all be gathered. And in that gathering is when the King, Jesus, the judge, will separate people one from another. So again, it's not our job. It is the King's job to make this separation, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And so at this point, And, from what I've read, a shepherd, when they would bring the flock in at night for, bring them into the shelter and all, get ready for the night, there would be both sheep and goats grazing together. And then when they came in at night, they would be separated. And at this point, we don't have an indication of good and bad like we do later in the parable. The sheep and the goats are kind of treated equally when they come in. So, the sheep go on the right, goats go on the left, and there's really no judgment at this point as far as good and bad. They're both there. They're both under the watchful eye of the shepherd, right? But the shepherd already knows one from the other. So when we get to the point where this is good and bad, if we see Jesus as the shepherd, Jesus is the king, Jesus is the shepherd, there's all these mixed metaphors. Jesus knows the good and the bad. He's preparing for judgment, but at that point, all are under the shepherd's watchful eye. That makes sense? Peggy's making face.
I'm not sure, right, there's a lot to,
Yeah,
to consider.
yeah. But, and I think up to this point in the parable, it's important for us to remember that whichever side we're on, we can't point fingers at the other side, supposing that we are the good side. Right? So when we know it's sheep and goats, we know there are differences in the people, we know the shepherd is separating us, but we don't know which side will be judged good and which side will be judged not good. So we don't have the right or the privilege to assume we're the good ones and whoever is on the other side are the bad ones.
Could it be like the innocent, like babies and people with disabilities? It seems that he would cover them.
Mm-hmm.
They would be exempt from the condemnation of that. So because we don't know
Right.
what this means, but thinking about it realistically, like people who are not able to make the decision because of some mental or incapability. I look at the innocent babies.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of looks towards something like that.
Yeah, and there again, this is where, it's God's judgment, not ours. So, we don't know. We don't know how those things are going to be handled. So, that we got to leave up to the shepherd. When the shepherd does the separating, we got to leave that up to the shepherd. And so what's going to happen is they will be separated, not so much in good and bad, but faithful and unfaithful, believers and unbelievers. And as Paul says, we're saved by grace through faith, not our works. So the faithful and the unfaithful may be a better way to look at this separation of the sheep and the goats. Then he says, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you. And as I'm looking at this, well, I guess we can assume those on the right hand are the ones who are favored, and the ones on the left hand are, because Jesus sits at the right hand of God. It's usually the right hand that's favored. But it doesn't say here that he says to the sheep, you're the good guys, and the goats, you're the bad guys. Right? He refers to you that are blessed by my Father, and then on the left, you that are accursed. So so the sheep are on the right, they're blessed. The goats are on the left, they're cursed. Okay, now it makes sense. But he doesn't say you sheep and you goats. He says you that are blessed, you that are cursed. And I won't point to you, Judy, I'm just using my,
That's all right. I understand.
you just happen to be on the
I'm
left.
just gonna say, cause she's on the left.
Yeah,
I'm left-handed anyway.
yeah, okay.
He has his favorites too.
But
He has his favorites.
yeah,
He does, he has favorites. 'Cause he's
Yeah.
chosen people.
mhm,
He's had favoritism, so that's his favorite ones.
yeah,
And the one disciple whom he loved, or who loved him. I'm confused.
yeah. Well, and
It just
there again,
came
it's,
out of nowhere.
I know.
you know, it's weird, you know, it's God's judgment, it's God's grace, you know?
Cause he's the father.
Yeah,
If you really look at what it means, he's our,
right, and as the perfect father, he loves all his children equally. Now, earthly fathers, you know, we may have our favorites, or, you know, ones we favor a little more than others, or whatever, and I'm sure earthly mothers do the same thing. But God, as the perfect loving parent, loves all his children equally. And loves all God's children with his whole heart. And that's the thing, it's not, he doesn't reserve anything. You know, he loves all his children with his whole heart. And so, and that's what we have to keep in mind. We need to somehow comprehend that difference between our heavenly father and our earthly parents. You know, we have a tendency to judge God according to what we know of earthly parents. And yet it should be the other way around. You know, we assume that while our earthly parents are not perfect, our heavenly father may not be perfect, but really our heavenly father is perfect. Our earthly parents can never live up to that. So that's another thing we need to keep in mind. So he says, you that are blessed inherit the kingdom. Again, it's not earn the kingdom, not work for the kingdom. It is earn the king, or inherit the kingdom. It is given to us as God's children. We inherit the blessing. We inherit the kingdom as God's children. It's not something we work for. And again, you know, from the foundation of the world, you know, that's that this kingdom has been prepared since God created the world. Now, you know, so the question is, are we talking predestination here? And I think as Lutherans, we kind of lean away from predestination. The idea being that the kingdom is prepared for whoever will inherit that kingdom when the time comes. So, you know, it's not to say that God knew that Jill would be coming along, you know, in how many thousands of years, and so I'm gonna have it for, you know, this place for Jill, but the place is prepared for whoever inherits it. So again, it boils down to God's judgment, God's grace, our faith. And again, that kingdom, you know, is not necessarily a place. We often think of the kingdom as heaven, the place we go when we die. But the kingdom is, as we say, your kingdom come, your rule, your authority, your power, be the controlling factor in our lives and in the world. That's what we prayed for. And then he goes into how we treat strangers and others, how we care for those in need, the hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, the naked, the sick, the prisoner. And again, this is, you know, as Stoffridgen said there in the beginning, that kind of becomes a conundrum for us. You know, does this mean we should help everybody? To what extent should we help those who we help? And again, I think it comes back to, you know, where is our heart in all this? You know, if we see somebody who's truly in need, If we can help them, if that help's gonna be beneficial to them, especially in the long run, then yes, that's something good for us to do. If that help is a way of us controlling them, or that help is just a way of us enabling them to continue a lifestyle that's not gonna be beneficial to them in the long run, then perhaps we should think twice about giving help or how we help and to what extent we help. So it, again, a lot of these things are not just cut and dried answers. I was at, I think it was way back when I was doing campground chaplaincy. There was a young man there who was, third assistant youth director in charge of something at whatever church he belonged to. And we were talking about helping the poor and the needy. And he said, well, if they come to our church and ask for help, he says, well, we'll help them, but we tell them they have to come to church 3 times before we'll give them help. So, yeah, my kids are hungry today. Well, come to church
Yeah.
3 weeks and then we'll
Yeah.
give you help 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, but maybe what if that church meets almost every day?
Well, even at that,
Maybe 3 days.
yeah, if I come with a need, and especially an emergency need,
Yeah.
If he's
And,
needed, you'll come back.
so that, I mean, is that help or is that blackmail?
Well,
It could
that's
be
like,
both.
that's like calling the doctor, you're sick and you can get an appointment in 2 weeks. That happens all the time. Years ago, you used to call and they'd say, well, can you come in at 3?
Mm-hmm.
They'd always slide you in, but now it's so hard to even get an appointment.
Yeah, but in this case, the doctor would say, well, you gotta come and see me 3 times before I help
Well,
you.
that's it.
Yeah,
Right?
That's not
So-
help.
next year.
So again, we gotta look at what our help really is all about. Is it really for helping others? Is it just to make ourselves feel better? Are we enabling? Are we blackmailing? All sorts of questions here. But the thing is, to have a heartfelt desire to do good for others. This is what we have a heartfelt desire to do good for others. Even if it means we don't get anything from it, even if it means we have to give up something to do it. But it is that heartfelt desire to help others. And that's what this really boils down to. And, it's interesting in this, in the variety of ways Jesus says to help. We have the food bank. We have those places who, those organizations who provide water in third world countries where water is not safe. We have, welcoming kinds of ministries for the homeless and whatever. Well, a stranger and you welcome me. We have the clothing bank, community aid and other clothing banks. We have, healthcare ministries. We have prison ministries. Jesus covers them all here, there are lots of ways, and it sort of goes back to Paul's idea of, the body has many parts and each part has its own function, and we all have our own gifts, and some are preachers and some are prophets and some are teachers, and so there are a lot of different ways that we can help. And Jesus kind of lays out a variety of things here. And even as far as the church, some of the city churches that may have some extra space may be able to do more as far as housing for the homeless and those kinds of things. We've been doing a lot of kind of food ministries and things, especially around the holidays. So I think we all have a sort of a niche that we can help to fill in. And so it's a lot of different ways that we can help each other or help those who are in need of help. And a question here is, as we think about how we help and the things we do, is can we be perfectly compassionate? To have deep compassion for all people and to want to help whoever we can as best we can. I think Well, I know, by human nature, we fall short. You know, we are often judgmental of people. You know, well, why don't they get a job? Why don't, you know, different things. But, you know, that perfect, again, it is that heartfelt desire to do good is what this really boils down to. And of course they ask, well, when was it? You know, when was it that we did all these things for you? We didn't even realize. And I've often used my mom's family as an example of this. You know, as I said there, they weren't really religious people, they weren't really faithful people, but they would help people who needed help, and they would do good things for people when they could. And, you know, I can see, you know, my mom and members of her family standing before the pearly gates saying, well, we didn't know we did all that stuff, you know? Or how often might somebody come back to you that you've done something for years ago and say, you know, that really made a difference in my life. And you may not have even thought about it, you know, just the fact that you smiled at somebody when they were feeling bad, or, you know, you, whatever. You know, they may come back and say, you know, that really made a difference in my life, and we don't realize it. Which is, you know, which is a good thing, because hopefully we're not doing those things just for the praise, and not doing those things just to earn that admiration, but we're doing them because we have that heartfelt desire to help. So, you know, when did we do all this stuff? And you did it without thinking. It was, as Stofferson said, it's the fruit, not the works that we do. It's the fruit of our faith. And Jesus, the King, says, well, when you did it to the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. So, you know, again, who does Jesus consider members of his family? Who will the King consider to be members of his family? For us, you know, we are in that mix because we are reborn children of God. When we're baptized as children of God, we are brothers and sisters of Jesus. We are in that family. So does that mean that we only have to do those things for other Christians? He says, you know, you've done it for the least of these who are members of my family. Or do we take the position that all people are God's children? Which I would be more inclined to say all people are God's children. God gives life. You know, if we believe what we say we believe about God, God gives life to everyone, and that makes everyone a child of God. And so we should not only do this for fellow Christians, but for everyone. And then he says to those at his left hand, the goats, you that are accursed, depart from me into the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. I had an interesting comment on that one. Let's see. I need to organize my notes better. Sometimes I feel like the absent-minded professor.
Take heart, it gets worse.
Yeah. Here. The cursed are banished to eternal fire. Their end the same as the devil and his demons, because they did not show compassion to the king's family. Certainly not the insignificant members. So, you know, to think about that, they are banished to the same fate as the devil and his demons. You know, think about Jesus telling Peter, get behind me, Satan. You know, to call somebody Satan, how serious that would be. So, you know, this is no small, this isn't a slap on the wrist, you know, this is a big thing. And, you know, he says, well, that's because you didn't do any of these things, for me whenever, I was in need, and they said, well, when did we see you in all those needs and not do them? And he says, when you did not do one for the least of these, you did it to me. And I kind of want to look, a little more. It kind of just caught my eye this morning, and I looked at the one I use that has the more literal translations. But I find it interesting that Jesus says, what you did to me, not what you did for me. And does that make a difference? Right? He says, as you did it to one of the least of these, you did it to me. And then he says, just as you did not do it to one of these least of these, you did not do it to me. Is there a difference between doing it to and doing it for? And I think it I guess would imply a more direct result. It's something that would make a difference perhaps in that person's life. You know what I mean? So like I say, I got to look into that a little more. But I think mostly we think about, well, if you did it for them, you did it for me. But to do it to them, I think it implies more
Directness?
how we treat them. Yeah, it's how you treat somebody, more of a personal interaction, perhaps.
Because if you do something for someone, they don't necessarily know that you're doing it. If you're doing it to someone, I would think that it's more
Yeah,
one-on-one type thing.
yeah. And how do we think about when we are helping or not helping? It's one thing for me to say, I didn't do that for you. But it's another thing to say, I didn't do that to you. And if we didn't do that to you, what did we do to you? Right? So what are we doing to someone when we fail to help them? Basically, we are rejecting them. Right? And I think it makes it harder to rationalize not doing it when we think about doing it to them rather than for them. Right?
Right.
That's something, and again, that just caught my eye this morning when I was looking this over, and I gotta, and the translation here isn't really that helpful. When's the first time he said that? Verse 39, 38, 39. And it just says, to them, an indirect object. Which really, but again, it is that an object, not the subject. It's the one who is affected by it. How are how are they affected by what we do? The two rather than the for makes it more, what is the effect of what we've done, and then our effect on them and our effect on Jesus. Maybe get a little too wrapped up in that little word thing, but I think it makes a difference, especially when commonly we would say, whatever you've done for me, you've done for them. But when we say whatever you do to me, and now I'm getting the image of a voodoo doll. Right? Whatever you do to this doll, you're doing to the person the doll represents.
I think you're taking it as a negative connotation.
Well, I don't think, if you do, if you're nice to the voodoo doll,
Yeah.
I
right?
don't think a voodoo doll is a nice.
Yeah, if you're nice to the voodoo doll and you give it a warm bed to sleep in and all that stuff, right?
Thank you.
But if you poke beetles in the voodoo doll and twist it around and,
Yeah, that's not what they do.
yeah, you know, so and that's, right, we think of the voodoo doll as a way to harm somebody.
Right. And then you got
And
the
that- that-
Cupid doll.
That
That's
is a
it.
weird image to bring into a Christian church, but,
Yeah.
You brought it up.
but, you know, the poor and the needy are voodoo dolls representing Jesus. Ooh. I might get defrocked if I bring that one up. I gotta be careful, because one of our new members, well, prospective members, is on the discipline committee for the synod. So he might call me on the carpet and say, hey, what's this whole voodoo thing you got going on here?
Well, they told me to talk about it.
Yeah, that was those ladies in Bible study. You know, just
They
like
did
Adam,
it to me.
just like Adam says, hey, it was Eve, she told me to eat the apple, you know? It was those ladies in Bible study, they're the ones who brought it up. Yeah, but, you know, again, it's just that kind of an image, you know, whatever we do to them, we do to Jesus. And so what do we want to do to Jesus? We don't want to, you know, we don't want to do to Jesus what essentially we did the first time, because he died for our sins, right? We want to do good things. And so this is, yeah, that makes it a little more personal. Yeah, more personal, I think. That these people are representative of Jesus. These people are perhaps the image of Jesus before us. They're voodoo dolls of Jesus. Wow, I'm gonna have trouble getting that out of my head. I might have to do some research on voodoo dolls. That's a big thing in Haiti, you know, in parts of Haiti, voodoo's a big
Yeah.
thing.
They believe in it.
Yeah, so
They're cool.
they would probably relate to that whole voodoo thing, you know?
Yeah.
But anyhow, what it boils down to is, you know, this idea of having a heartfelt desire to help. Stoffridgen says, in Jesus' eschatological vision, again, that vision of the end times, we discover that when Jesus comes into our heart, he brings all of needy humanity along with him. So, right? And so again, it's that heartfelt thing. If we have this heartfelt desire to do good, and especially to do good for Jesus, that same desire will spill over into doing good for those who are in need. So be good people. Even though your works don't save you, works aren't a bad thing. There was another one here that, here. Jesus' vision makes it clear. The life of the Christian is a life given in love to the least of these. But that's good works, isn't it? Won't such good works for our neighbor destroy the faith alone foundation of our faith? Then he has in parentheses, we Lutherans actually worry about this sometimes. The answer to the question is no. Our good works will not destroy our faith alone posture. We can do all the loving of the least and little ones we can possibly imagine and not be liable to belief in works righteousness. We're called to do lots of good works, but we're also called not to keep score. When we keep score of our deeds, we want to credit our love of neighbor to our heavenly bank account. Loving our neighbor is not the problem. Keeping score of our good deeds of neighbor love is the problem. The truly righteous don't keep score. Their left hand doesn't know what their right hand is doing. And Jesus makes reference to that as he teaches the Lord's Prayer, right before he teaches the Lord's Prayer. Go into your, or when you give alms, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. Such as these will stand before the sovereign one day, clothed in God's righteousness alone. So, and I thought that was a good way to look at it. Good works are not bad things, and doing good works is not wrong. And just because we say your good works will not save you, doesn't mean that good works are wrong.
They can't hurt.
But yeah, but like he said, like Stopperton says, just don't keep score, right? Don't say, yeah. So I don't think God will be impressed if we stand before the pearly gates again in that image and then tell St. Peter, well, I helped all these people and I did this and I did that,
He says, I have the list here, you don't have to tell me what you did.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, what a good boy am I, right? Oh, what a good girl am I, look what I did. So,
And don't keep score negatively either.
yeah. Yeah, because, and Luther once said, we need to be careful when we say, well, we do our best. Because what is your best? Like he said, if you pray 8 hours a day, well, you could have prayed 10 hours, or you could have prayed 12 hours. Or, if you helped 10 hungry people, well, maybe you could have helped 15 hungry people, or maybe you could have helped 20.
Yeah.
So this idea of doing your best really kind of is wide open as well. So, and a lot of that comes back to his sin boldly idea. We can't do everything for everyone, but if we don't do everything for everyone, we're not doing what God wants us to do. So we do we do what we do and count on God's grace, right? Which means, of course, we don't flaunt God's grace, right? We don't say, well, we don't have to do anything because we're forgiven, right? We don't have to do anything because God is gracious. So it's, really what's in your heart? I just keep coming down to what's in your heart. So, Hank, you look like you want to say something.
Going back to judgment. God commissioned Christ to judge the living and the dead. Christ commissioned the disciples to judge the 12 tribes. Who are the 12 tribes?
Well, I don't know. You mean who are the 12 tribes now? Or who?
I don't remember exactly where. I think it was in Acts, maybe, where Christ said that, no, I'm sorry, it's in Luke, where the apostles will judge the 12 tribes of Israel when the kingdom of God arrives.
I don't remember that. We'll have to look that one up. That'll be your homework, Hank.
Well, I have it. I mean, it's Luke 28 to 30. Luke 22, 28 to 30. Basically, the apostles will judge the 12 tribes of Israel when the kingdom of God arrives. And I guess my question is, who are the 12 tribes of Israel now? Do we know that?
Let me look this up now. Luke 22, 28 to 30.
Yes.
Yeah, you will sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel, he says to the disciples. You are those who have stood by me in my trials, and I confer on you, just as my Father has conferred on me, a kingdom, so that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom, and you will sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Probably the apostles' presence. Jesus Faces Ministry. 29:30. Oh, they just give a bunch of other references here. Judging connotes ruling, not simply passing judgment, is one thing that it says. And on the HarperCollins Study Bible, it says judgment connotes ruling, not simply passing judgment. So that's one thing to look at. But they give a bunch of references here to Psalms. See the note on 1329. Let's see what that says. 1329. The people coming from every direction could be the diaspora. Eat in the kingdom of God is a common image for salvation. So, yeah. So, do a little research on that one.
Okay,
Okay,
all right, I'll look into it more.
that's your homework.
Okay, thank you.
Give us a report next Wednesday.
I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? And let's close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Well, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving. Have an awesome week.